Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers, wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Azumullah ujurana wa ujurakum bimusabina bil Husain alayhi salam. In this series, we are looking at the life and the legacy of one of the most colorful figures in early Islamic history, Al-Mukhtar al-Thaqafi, who is renowned for his service to Allah and service to humanity in dispensing justice to the many killers of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Al-Mukhtar had many remarkable characteristics. He was a remarkable man from many angles. But one of the things that is truly admirable about him, apart of course from his unwavering dedication to Ahlulbayt alayhimus salam, was the fact that power did not change him. He had certain goals before he came to power. He carried out those goals afterwards. He had a certain platform before he came to power. He continued on that same platform afterwards. Some people, some politicians, when they come to office, they say one thing beforehand. They say, for example, we're going to lower taxes, we're going to improve education, we're going to pave the roads, we're going to give you health care, we're going to end the war, whatever it happens to be. They get into office and that is it. But not Al-Mukhtar. He indeed did what he said and said what he did. And thus, just as he said before, when he gathered the people of Kufa to formally give allegiance to him as the now ruler of Kufa and much of Iraq and even beyond that, he took their allegiance on 5 things. So there are 5 things that he required from his followers and that he intended to do. The first 2 are quite straightforward, following the book of Allah and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. We would expect this from someone who is leading the Muslims. And indeed, these were the criteria that Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam insisted on when he was in the Shura, where Uthman was selected the caliph by those people who were in the Shura. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam insisted that this is the criteria for rule, or I will not take the rule. Book of Allah and Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Additionally, Al-Mukhtar was quite clear that one of his main goals was to take vengeance on the killers of the Imam, and he did that admirably. However, there were 2 other criteria which they are Islamic. They are included in the Holy Quran. They are included in the Sunnah. And yet Al-Mukhtar needed to state them out for people, perhaps because people don't always get them. One of them was supporting the deprived, supporting the underprivileged, supporting the oppressed in society, and also racial equality, especially between the Arabs and the non-Arabs, or the Arabs and the Mawali, as we were discussing in the previous episode, for those of you who were with us then. Now, of course, this should not be a surprise. We know that we are all brothers and sisters in faith. And if we are not brothers and sisters in faith, we are brothers and sisters in humanity. We know that the Holy Prophet, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, did he not say there is no difference between an Arab and a non-Arab, or a black person, or a white person, or any other sort of person? That Allah Ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhan nas, O people, inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa unta. We have created you from a male and a female. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلًا. We have made you into tribes and groups. For what reason? لِتَعَارَفُوا. That you can come to know and recognize each other. إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. The most honorable of you before Allah Ta'ala is the one who has the most piety, not from this country, that nationality. I'm emphasizing this point because I genuinely feel this is as much an issue today as it was in the time of Al-Mukhtar, even though the Islamic sources are quite clear that there is no room for this sort of racism and prejudice in Islam. It is indeed a big social problem. We can see the results of what happened in the time of Al-Mukhtar. We see the results of it today. And it is also a spiritual problem. It is related from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, who himself relates from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, that whoever has just a little smidgen, like a little bit of grain, or maybe an ant-sized bit of this sort of prejudice, whether it's clan prejudice, racial prejudice, family prejudice, group prejudice, whatever, inside their heart, when they are raised on the Qiyamah, who will they be raised with? They will be raised with the people of Jahiliyyah, the people of the time of ignorance, because this is a very ignorant mentality. This is the way of thinking of Jahiliyyah. This is not the Islamic mentality. This is not the prophetic mentality. But alas, it was a mentality that was still very present in the time of Al-Mukhtar. On the one hand, the Mawali were complaining. They felt that Al-Mukhtar was favoring the nobility. On the other hand, the nobility were deeply disturbed. They sensed that their privileges were being eroded. And so after Al-Mukhtar's big commander, Ibrahim ibn Malik al-Ashtar, left, they had a secret meeting. Nobles only, no non-nobility welcome. They had this secret meeting, this meeting of sedition. And they said, by Allah, this Mukhtar, what has he done? He's made himself our Amir, he's made himself our leader, and then he's taken our slaves. These are our slaves, he's brought them close to himself. Not only has he done that, he's treating them with respect, he's given them horses to ride, he's giving them our treasures, he's giving them our wealth. Our slaves have now disobeyed us, and our orphans and our women, our widows, have been despoiled. Yes, imagine that. Some women might actually want to marry out of their clan or their social class or their tribe. Islam has no problem with these things. But this is not what these people wanted. They wanted to have control, their women, their slaves, their property. And so they themselves led a revolution against Al-Mukhtar. And with Ibrahim ibn Malik al-Ashtar out of the city, they were soon able to create a great commotion, to the point that they actually cut off water to the followers of Al-Mukhtar. They were very serious about this. They were going to get rid of him by any means necessary. This was a very difficult situation for Al-Mukhtar. How is he supposed to handle this sort of infighting in Kufa? It's one thing to be fighting the enemies of Allah and people like Yazid, but it's quite another when they are your own people, or people who up until now have been supporting you. And many of his companions and his commanders also felt the same way. One of them said, for example, I really do want Al-Mukhtar to succeed. This is what I want. I want him to be victorious. But by Allah, I also really hate to destroy the nobles and the elders of my own clan by my own hand. And as this commander said, by Allah, I would prefer to die than to kill these people myself. So there was this unwillingness among some of the people to fight and to actually put down this rebellion. And Al-Mukhtar himself was trying to discourage the people from killing those who were rising up, because it was a very difficult situation. Ultimately, Ibrahim ibn Malik al-Ashtar returned to the city, and when he returned, the tide turned and the rebels were put down. As someone once said, the very preaching of racial equality, which helped Al-Mukhtar rise to power with the aid of the Mawali, now turned the Arabs against him, who feared the prospect of their privileged position being eroded. Order was restored in Kufa. The rebels were put down, and now some of them were taken captive. Again, Al-Mukhtar has a difficult decision. What should he do with these rebels who beforehand were about to kill him and were about to kill his followers and committed one of the worst crimes, which is treason? Should he kill them? Should he put them in prison? Al-Mukhtar had a very logical mind. Indeed, Al-Mukhtar, one can say, had a very one-track mind, and so he divided them into two groups. One group was the group of people who had participated in the killing of Al-Imam Hussein alayhi salam. This group, that was it. They had committed this crime of fighting the Imam, and they forfeited their lives. The other ones, he let them go, but he asked them to swear an oath that they're not going to side with his enemies. And thus, the opposition to Al-Mukhtar ended. Finally, Al-Mukhtar was in a true position to carry out what he really wanted to do, which was to take vengeance on the killers of Al-Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And in the next episode, we will see how he and his followers accomplished that. Thank you very much for joining us. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.